Quale futuro lei si augura per i bambini di oggi? Presidente, quale futuro lei si augura per i nostri bambini? Presidente? Presidente?
Hello guys and welcome to a new episode of Italian Politician of the Week. I am Ippernick, the great is silent, and today we are talking about Giulio Andreotti. Usually I say the episode number at the beginning of every video, but I keep screwing that up lately, so let's just drop it once and for all. This should be episode 8 of season 4, count on your own from now on. Andreotti should need no introduction. He is the longest serving prime minister in Italian history and 32 times Minister of the Republic. Among his more important roles, we have Minister of Defense from 1959 to 1966 and again in 1974, Minister of Industry from 1966 to 1968, and Foreign Minister from 1983 to 1989. Andreotti remained in Parliament from the times of the Constituent all the way to his death in 2013. Granted that he was nominated senator for life in 1991, hence making him no longer reliant on votes even after bribes bill. Considering his immense level of influence, it shouldn't be surprising at all that Andreotti is in many ways involved in literally all main historical events in post-war Italy, including the very bad ones. As usual, let's begin from, you guessed it, the beginning. Giulio Andreotti was born in 1919 in Rome. He was raised by his mother in a state of extreme poverty alongside his two siblings. From a very young age, he would work to support his family until he eventually was able to get into university to study law. He did this despite his poor health. In fact, ever since he was a teenager, Andreotti suffered from constant headaches his whole life. It was because of this condition that they didn't let him enlist in the army, something that didn't really bother him. In fact, he loved to tell this story. At the military medical examination, the doctor in charge gave me 6 months to live. When I became a Minister of Defense, I called him to tell him I was still alive, but he was dead. In 1941, he signed up to the Sapienza University in Rome. There, he also joined the Catholic University Federation, the only political group allowed in Italy other than the Fascist Party. Initially, Andreotti wanted to study navigation law and decided to make his thesis on the fleet of the Papal State. His research brought him to the Vatican Library. He went to the counter to ask for the books he needed, and there he met Alcide de Gasperi. That's how it all began. Andreotti became de Gasperi's assistant and protégé as he founded the Democratic Christian Party, following him in his political journey and learning everything he could from him. By the late 50s, Andreotti had his own current, a pretty advanced grasp on statesmanship, the fate of his colleagues, and a vast net of connections. As we already saw in Moro's video, the 60s and 70s were not exactly good times to be a right-wing member of Democrazia Cristiana, since the most high-ranking positions were held by people of center-left orientation in and out of the party system. People like Gonella and Pella buckled up and sided with the enemy, while others like Scelba and Piccioni just gave up entirely. Andreotti was part of the former category. He stuck around and kept a low profile, but he still remained highly connected, especially with the branches of the army, police and secret services who were predominantly right-wing. It will be thanks to these connections that Andreotti will become Minister of Defense. Unfortunately for him though, you can't work with the army for too long in 1960s Italy without getting involved into some shady shit. Okay, so what you're about to hear won't have the same impact if you haven't watched the previous videos on Moro, De Gasperi and Gelli. Please check them out if you really want a bigger picture of what really is going on. One thing a lot of people forget about Italy is that we never really got rid of the fascists in our institutions. Thankfully now most of them are dead, but back in the day most of the military officers that had committed war crimes in the Second World War were pardoned and had risen up in the ranks of the army. The threat of a fascist takeover was just as likely as a communist one, and thanks to Democrazia Cristiana that never came to be. While Moro dealt with the left-wing front, Andreotti dealt with the right in their habitat, the shadows. The MSI weren't really a threat for as long as they were left in the parliamentary opposition forever, but the army, the police and the secret service, you can't just ignore them. Andreotti, as the professional centrist that he was, he mediated with the fascist forces to make sure they didn't take over the country, because they feared Moro's and Rumor's reforms, which they saw as communist. The years of lead, as terrible as they were, they could have been much worse if at the Ministry of Defense they had put someone like, I don't know, Nenni or Sulo. In 1967, when De Lorenzo's dossiers were uncovered for the execution of his planned solo involving Segni, Andreotti was assigned the duty of getting rid of the documents. However, there is some evidence to suggest that before erasing them, some copies were sent to Gelli's P2. Sometime later, in 1974, he released to the public another document containing all the info regarding the failed coup of General Juan Valerio Borghese, hence proving that he knew all along and that he probably had something to do with the general's sudden escape to Spain. In 1979, so shortly before the beginning of the P2 investigations, Andreotti's name appeared in many testimonies and documents regarding the P2 members Sindona and Gelli, not to mention his possible involvement in the murder of journalist Pecorelli, a member of P2 himself, who was likely to release to the public many highly valuable info on the secret organization and Andreotti's ties to it. His name was also thrown around by many mafia collaborators, the so-called repented associates, who decided to turn themselves in to give info in exchange for a pardon. Many claimed that Andreotti had met with the leader of Cosa Nostra, Salvatore Rina, and most of the witness accounts actually match, although these accounts need to be taken with a grain of salt, since the system had little to no way to verify the validity of what was being said, and there were many associates who turned out just lying to make bank or to interfere with the investigation. Despite the overwhelming amount of hints, the substantial evidence is not a lot, and most of Andreotti's sentences, positive or negative, are today still wrapped in mystery due to the highly politicized role of the justice system of the 80s and the 90s. If you think that this is crazy, well, consider this. As all these cases were going around, Andreotti kept being one of the most powerful men in the country. Now, I already talked about what Andreotti did before the 80s in Moro's video, so let's continue on with his other political contributions. In 1983, Andreotti was made foreign minister in the government of the party secretary of the Socialist Party, Bettino Craxi. They didn't see eye to eye on most things, but foreign policy wasn't one of them. You see, the 80s saw the improvement of Russian and American relations, something Andreotti can at least take some credit for. But the stance Italy is remembered for taking back then was for siding with the Arabic countries during international disputes. The Sigonella crisis is a great example. In short, the crisis began in October 1986, when a Palestinian terrorist had hijacked an Italian ship and killed some Israeli citizens. One thing led to another, and the Italian authorities were eventually able to catch him. Reagan was pleased and expected Craxi to send him to America, but he refused alongside Andreotti because they wanted to judge him according to their standards. The terrorist first was put on a plane to be sent to Rome, since he was in Sicily, but some American troops stationed there encircled the plane to stop its departure. They will later retreat after Craxi called reinforcement, and Italy won the diplomatic dispute. After the end of Craxi's term, Andreotti remained foreign minister under Giovanni Correa and his new rival in the party, Ciriaco de Mita, who held left-wing views contrary to him and Forlani, a close ally of Andreotti who was also somewhat related to Propaganda Due. De Mita as prime minister didn't last very long, and Andreotti succeeded him in 1989. He will remain there until 1992. It won't be an easy government. To fight the accusation of being involved with the mafia, Andreotti passed several laws to crack down on the phenomena. In response to this, the mafia committed some of their harshest attacks over the course of the late 80s and 90s. They killed magistrates such as Borsellino and Falcone, politicians such as Andreotti's close friend and mayor of Palermo Salvolima, and even before that, the president of Sicily Pier Santo Mattarella, brother of the current president of the Republic Sergio Mattarella. In 1990, he also passed the Mami Law under the pressure of Craxi, that in turn granted more freedom to private television entertainment, such as Berlusconi's Fininvest. Furthermore, with the fall of the Berlin Wall, the political environment in Italy had no reason anymore to rely on the current political structures. Communism was not a threat to contain anymore, so people had no reason to vote for the Christian Democratic Party. Francesco Cossiga, former ally of Andreotti and now president of the Republic, did his best to give Andreotti a hard time in the hopes of calling for anticipated elections, which without a doubt would have shown a drastic drop in votes for the DC. But Andreotti hung on and took the necessary measures to remain in power despite all the people who wanted him to go down for his crimes. One of them was to expose Cossiga as member of Gladio, a secret organization in the Stay Behind coalition which existed solely to prevent a communist uprising. This was enough to shut Cossiga up for a bit, but the group was far from dangerous. In fact, it was somewhat inactive since the 70s and only targeted radical left members anyways. After Andreotti's nomination as senator for life by Cossiga, the party went through a bit of an identity crisis, with its current failing to find a new leader in time for the 1992 elections. Personally, I think this was all part of Cossiga's plan, but I may be giving him a bit too much credit. In 1992, the DC got the lowest results ever, 29%. It was still enough to govern because the communists also had lost votes, but the situation still wasn't very good. The economy was shit, the mafia was at everyone's throat, and right when Forlani and Andreotti were battling each other off to become the president of the Republic, Falcone died, leading to Parliament voting institutionally for Scalfaro, someone closer to De Mita and Prodi. As the First Republic came to an end, Andreotti witnessed, as senator for life, all the developments of the Second Republic. Berlusconi as prime minister, the left finally winning an election, Italy adopting the euro, and the short-lived period of the two-party system. After the narrow elections of 2006, he was basically one of the 6 senators for life that voted in favor of Prodi's second cabinet, and ultimately also the one who let it fall, possibly after making a deal with Berlusconi. Aside of this maneuver, Andreotti was a silent observer from 1992 to 2013. Ironically, these are the years of the Second Republic. When he died, he took an unimaginable number of secrets with him to the grave. We will never know how responsible he was for all the screwed up things that happened in Italy over the years. However, despite all the sketchiness surrounding his name, Andreotti is still remembered as one of the best statesmen Italy ever had. Unlike Moro, he didn't try to forgive the bad to govern well alongside it. He perpetuated the bad to bring the good. And with all that is going on at the moment, I can't help but wonder, what would Andreotti do? Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy my work. I will see you next time.